What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Rocket Lab Weekly. It's episode 49. We're 3 weeks away from doing 1 year every week straight Rocket Lab Weeklies. Matt, who is practically a co-host of the show, welcome. And how was your week?
Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, it's sorry, this is really far away. Thanks for having me again, man. It's always a blast to come on here and hang out with the community for a little bit. Week was good, man. Palantir did a great job this week getting into the S&P, but otherwise, I mean, the markets were down, but it's to be expected. I think if you look at where we were in the beginning of the year compared to where we are now, we're still up massively. And I know my portfolio, my individual brokerage account was prior to this week in the 40% year to date range or something like that. So I can't complain with a little bit of a pullback. It's always healthy. Got things like Google kind of coming into fair value, although I'm pissed off at them from a political standpoint, but that's a different story for a different day.
What did they do now?
What aren't they doing? Anyway, that's a different story. Don't want to get into it now, but otherwise the market has been rather favorable to me. It's nice to see that you're potentially getting some discounts on some really good companies. Rocket Lab's coming back into buying order, so I wouldn't be surprised if I start adding and nibbling away because it's back at 581, which is decent. I was expecting, even with this Wall Street bets pop, that it would come back down below $6 again. So hopefully it stays there for a little bit because I'm not ready for it to go off on a run yet. Right, I'm still trying to accumulate, get to 25,000 shares.
Yeah, it's. I think it's. What you just mentioned is a question on a lot of our minds. This is also a comment from Tivo. Hey Vince, the stock price came back quite a bit. Should I sell or should I buy back at 550? And my answer to this is, like the question in itself, how you're asking it is wrong, because when you're a long-term investor, you have a thesis. And the thesis has nothing to do with the stock price. So like, just because the stock price went down, you shouldn't be thinking about selling. So if you want to sell because the stock price is down, yet the company, nothing has changed on the thesis, then you're not a long-term investor. You're a trader. So if the thesis is intact and you believe in the company and the stock price comes down, that's a very good thing for you, because then you can buy the thing that you believe in much cheaper than you could before. Let me know if I missed something, Mr. Matt. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I was typing something on X. I believe it all just depends. Some people might be really trying to get that 30-cent differential, right? But I think, to me, if you look 20 years down the road, which is at the moment what I anticipate holding this stock for, right? I anticipate holding this till it becomes a fully mature holding. It's not going to matter if I bought it at 550 or 580, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I think both are a price to accumulate. And I think you just need to recognize, for me specifically, right? So this is my investment style. Like I said, I'm looking 10, 20 years down the road. The company's going to be completely different from what we're looking at today. The landscape's going to be completely different. I mean, if you just look at what kind of space infrastructure we had in 2008 when the iPhone came out, and here we are today, 18 years, 17 years later, if you project that out another 17, 18 years, I mean, how vastly different will communications and satellite infrastructure look like? It's going to be mind-boggling, and I don't think we've necessarily even touch the surface of it. So I guess it really depends. What I would say for a lot of folks listening that have the same question as TiVo is, don't be penny wise, but a dollar foolish. Don't say, "Oh, I really want to get at $5." It's like, if you don't have exposure, sometimes it's better to just get involved in the stock in general. I think sometimes what you'll end up hearing is people regret not buying more. I regret not buying more Palantir.
It's so interesting, because do you remember your cost average on Palantir? Like, I don't remember. And every time when I look at my portfolio, I'm like, why did I not go heavier?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I was so afraid of I think I was so afraid of going back to 2021, 2022, when the stock was in like the less than $10 range. My cost base is around $13 for Palantir. And so I was so afraid messing that up, because I think before I bought this most recent tranche, I think I bought like another 500 shares or something a couple months ago of Palantir, and I think my cost base was like $11.50 or $12 or something like that. And I was so afraid to mess that up, because what if it goes back down? And it escalated so quickly. Now I recognize it's like, I just don't want to be in a situation where 20 years down the road, I'm like, well, I had the opportunity to invest 100 grand into Rocket Lab and I never did. Right. And I'm okay living with that binary feeling personally. Right. This is a personal decision. You obviously have to make your own. But for those that are listening, I'm okay with saying I lost 100 grand, but I invested in potentially one of the greatest opportunities of all time, and it just didn't go my way. Versus if I knew it could have been a $100,000 investment, and it ends up being as big or half as big as SpaceX or something of the like, and I'm like, well, flop that one. I don't know if I'd be able to live with that, right? And it goes back to the I did make that funny post on X with the Inception video, if you remember. Like, do you trust me? And it's like, well, you could either do it and we see what happens, or you could live to be an old man filled with regret. And it's the truth. I mean, it's literally like, and I unfortunately look back at Palantir, which I am foreshadowing in 4 to 5 years time, we're going to be in the same exact position with Rocket Lab, entering the S&P 500, doing phenomenally, continuing to kick butts and take names. And it's a foreshadowing of being like, man, like, I wish I invested 100 grand into Palantir, and I never did. I only invested 50 or 60. And not only that, but it took me so much longer. I was so concerned about, and granted, it's easier for me to say now because my portfolio is way bigger. But, in retrospect, I had a lot of confidence in Palantir. And I took that being like, man, I missed out on investing in Palantir. It's so cheap. Rocket Lab's giving me that opportunity. And it's also, when you think about when I'm saying cheap with Palantir, I'm talking about $30 billion market cap. Cheap with Rocket Lab is a tenth of that, right? $2.5 to $3 billion market cap. So you're literally starting an order of magnitude lower. I mean, does Rocket Lab have the opportunity to go maybe as large as say Palantir does in terms of market cap? I don't know. But I could easily see a situation where Rocket Lab goes up 25x from where it is today. So, and then stock buybacks, right? I mean, eventually they're going to get to the place where they have to start buying back stock because there's no other things they want to invest in. And I believe that the gross margins and net margins they're going to eventually get are going to be more than they can reinvest back into the company. So, anyway, I know that was kind of like a how's your week been, but also hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very valid. It's on a lot of people's minds constantly on should we sell, should we buy more? And I think you spoke a lot of truth, and it was coming from someone who's truly long-term. Because maybe some people are here who just, want to buy it and 3 weeks later sell it. So your thinking, I think, is very correct, and it's truly, truly long-term. And I happen to think the same, that if I, like, if you see a good opportunity in front of you, and there's always a risk that it doesn't work out, but if you don't pull the trigger, then you're like, what are you doing as an investor? Then just go and invest index funds, So, yeah. Cool. So let's start going through the Rocket Lab news of the week. And this week, this is not a Rocket Lab news. This is a community news. So after a specific Rocket Lab indicator being correct for so long, Dave finally decided to tie the knot on his girlfriend and seal the deal. And they got married. So I just want to congratulate to them.
Hot Dave. It's a good picture, man. A lot of smiles.
Exactly. So they are in Greece now, enjoying themselves, and hopefully Dave is going to be back into Rocket Lab life.
I would love to bend Dave's ear off camera about Greece and Have you been to Greece?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, maybe I need to bend your ear as well, because I'm going to be doing these quarterly trips back to undisclosed European location. Then I need to.
I recommend it. It's one of the
Yeah.
nicest places in Europe. Yeah. Cool. All right, we go to the next one. NASA announced their decision to postpone the launch of the Escapade mission this year, citing logistical and schedule considerations with the launch service operated by Blue Origin. Surprise, surprise. We're all very surprised, I know. Although we are disappointed by this delay, we fully support NASA's decision and remain dedicated to this important mission. We will continue to collaborate closely with all partners to ensure thorough preparation for the next available launch opportunity. I want to get your comments on this because the launch window is closing in October. I don't know how they can launch in the spring. I guess they have a lot of fuel left in the rocket, or I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain how large the window is for them. So, from what I understand, it's a 6-month window every 2 years. So,
yeah, something like that.
Let me just see Mars launch window.
About Curtis.
Yeah, it looks like it's October. Oh, that's just never mind. That was let's see. It occurs every 26 months.
Yeah.
Best launch window. I don't have anything specific as of yet, but
did you see the Everyday Astronaut video that Jeff? It was 2 videos. They did one in the factory of New Glenn, and one was the launch pad of New Glenn.
I didn't see the launch pad one though, but I did watch the factory one. I didn't finish the factory one though. I only got like 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah, because in the launch pad one, he actually stopped the Everyday Astronaut because he said the window is closing, and he was like, no, like the window is open a lot longer if you have a lot of delta V, you know. So I was thinking maybe the New Glenn could lift, I don't know, 17,000 kilograms, and then the capstone satellites are only like 2,000, and then you have a lot of extra fuel to like speed up the rocket a lot more.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, if you have some bursts, yeah, if you were able to do some bursts, but I'm not exactly sure how. Yeah, then you have to worry about slowing down too. So if you're going faster, you know.
Yeah,
you have to worry about slowing
and that's
down.
on Rocket Lab, right? Like because the New Glenn is like launching Capstone, and then the satellites themselves have to like get into orbit around Mars. No.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not exactly sure at what point they launch off the stage 1. You know. Good question. I mean, it's all trajectories, right? So maybe they're thinking if they launch it a little bit later, 6 months later, then they could still just change the trajectory, and eventually the satellites will be able to get captured into Mars's orbit regardless. But that's a risk, you know? It's easy to kind of catch and change course. And in my opinion, it's easier to, when you're chasing something, it's harder to change course and try to meet it, right? Because it's always going to be falling away from you, or like, you know, spinning away from you. But the way that I look at it from like an early perspective is, if you're shooting early and the planet's still all the way back here and you're trying to meet it in the middle, it's easier to change your trajectory early. But if you're late and you're kind of like chasing it, it's much harder, and your changes and your adjustments are going to have to be much sharper. And I feel like the margin of error is going to be a lot more later in the window. But I literally know nothing about, you know, aerospace engineering. So
we are like these guys in the meme, you know, when
I'm just a guy.
Yeah, you know, you watch the baseball game with the popcorn and the soda, and then I would have hit that, you know.
Yeah, I'm literally desk chair, you know,
rocket scientist.
Yeah, rocket scientist.
It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
it's like F Blue Origin. We would have built that rocket 10 times as good, you know. We would have launched on time, Matt, if you and me do it. No.
I know. Yeah, if If only Jeff wasn't hanging out so much on his big ass yacht, he would have made it.
Exactly. By the way, did you hear Palantir joined the S&P 500? No, it's the first time I hear it.
Word on the street. You heard it here first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The AI imposters duped the S&P 500 committee.
Yeah, it's amazing that a black box company can actually somehow weasel its way into the S&P.
Yeah. They hacked the system because it's like a spy company, and then the AI rewrote the code, and then that's
the word. That's the word.
Cool. We go to the next one. Sir Peter Beck actually became knighted, if I understand this correctly.
Yeah.
Because I think the way it works is like first it was like published that he was going to get knighted, and then he started to be called Sir Peter Beck, and now like the actual thing happened, like he was knighted.
Interesting. Well deserved, right? I mean, he's completely changing the landscape. I mean, now you have many other companies also talking about setting up pads in Australia and New Zealand just to have that multi-hemisphere accessibility, right? So you almost have it literally on the opposite side of the world, an ability to now, launch whenever, right? If there's any sort of necessary I don't know. I always go back to things like Armageddon and stuff like that. But like if you have multiple needs to attempt to do something, now you have different launch pads, different different ways to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I just got an idea from Kevin's chill code post. I'm betting Neutron gets to orbit on first try. My idea is, because isn't there US betting sites where you can like literally bet on anything, and maybe like we could make like a small bet, like from the channel money, that Neutron is going to like make it on the first try, and then we just like follow it when we.
I would definitely be down for that. I can look around.
I would find where we can bet on it.
I could also call like Caesars or something and say, what are you guys doing? How can we do this? How can we bet on this?
Yeah, if anybody can find out, also like can help us how to do it, I think it would be really cool to bet on this as a like Rocket Lab Weekly, and then we just follow it. And then I don't know how we divide up the winnings. Maybe we do like I also don't know how much these bets pay. Like maybe we bet like $100 and then we get like 130 back. But if it's any substantial amount, like if we bet $100 and get like $1,000, then maybe we do like a special launch party or something after the. Yeah, I have no clue.
Can you bet on rocket launches? Sportsbook anywhere? Somebody's already asking. Rocket launch odds. Anyone got a site where you can bets online? Just added these. Oh, length of national anthem, Crew Dragon, SpaceX. Okay, let me see. I'll do some more research.
Awesome. That's going to be exciting. Okay, next news. We're building the world's largest carbon composite rocket, including its captive fairing. Neutron's fairing will remain attached to the vehicle, and like it will be reused across multiple missions. Neutron's interstage, stage 1, stage 2, internal tanks, fairing, and other structures are all in production right now with pictures. But before we go into this, did you see Space Talks tweeting about a presentation that was done to university students?
I did.
Where apparently Rocket Lab accidentally disclosed who they are acquiring, and then he decided to blur out, which I think was very wise. So he didn't share it with the world, and didn't get people fired from Rocket Lab and get them into lawsuits. So thank you for that. But he took down those tweets. I wanted to have them for the show. I couldn't find those tweets. I asked him what happened. I haven't gotten an answer yet. But in those tweets, he tweeted that on the hot fire, they have not done a full duration hot fire test. And then the longest test that they have done was like a few seconds long. And I had a very hard time believing that. And because, you know, like Peter Beck doesn't strike me as a guy who you know, like it's not this Astra type of like over PRing what they have. And he was so like if you have only done a 2-second hot fire test, it means that the like you're not done with the hot fire testing. Like you don't really know how the engine is working, right? And he sounded so confident lately, and I don't know, I just can't see it. So I wanted to get your opinion on that one.
You know, we're in our little chat, right? Our little Rocket Lab chat, and that whole presentation was, I would say, overhyped. So much information was going to come out, and this and that, and a lot of it was just regurgitated information from the Q2 earnings report. There might have been some new bullets, and might have been reworded slightly differently for a college audience rather than a stock presentation. But I would say, comparatively to what I was expecting to learn from this grand presentation that was going to show all, and it might have been because it was edited, you know, at least what they say, some things were kept off comparatively to what you know, might have been there. But to me, I was rather underwhelmed by the whole thing. I would say, I'm just looking at it now, hundreds of critical engine tests completed successfully. Ignition test, oxygen flowing, startup shutdown, completed checkout of all the test stand systems, including propellant flow tests, turbo pump, major program milestone achieved for hot fire. And then with that, they're building the new engines. So I guess I'm a little bit confused as to how extensively they tested it. I mean, to me, I don't think if they only tested it for a few seconds, they would say hot fire completed, right? To me, hot fire is almost like a ready level full testing, right? There's engine testing, and then there's hot fire. But I could be wrong in that, you know, it could be a completely separate thing, like a sustained hot fire or something of the like. But I feel like it would be very difficult to model, specifically with the transients and everything like that they were referring to only get a couple second test from that. And it also could be, we don't necessarily know when that presentation was given.
That was my thought also.
Yeah, so it could also be, you know, this is relatively new news. I mean, it's a month old for us at this point, but maybe that presentation was from 2 months ago, and you know, the testing started in May, right? So it could have only been in late June, early July that presentation was given. So anyway, just some food for thought. I mean, I don't want to say that whole thing left a sour taste in my mouth, the whole presentation. But I was rather underwhelmed because I was told I was going to have like a life-changing news about the company, and it was the same stuff that I had seen on the earnings report. So that'd be like me telling you guys in the channel here that I have life-changing Rocket Lab information that none of you guys do, and you guys are like, holy shit, I have to watch this live stream. And then I bring up the investor presentation from last month and walk through it again with you guys. You'll be like, this isn't new. We saw this 2 months ago. So I was rather frustrated, and maybe that's me being super critical, and apologies if that's the way it comes across. But, you know, I was really expecting to learn a step change difference of something about the company, and I can't pinpoint anything new.
To be fair, if like the Space Talks guy, whoever he is, if he saw who they are acquiring, because he said that when he was showing the presentation, accidentally his computer was open, and then you could see some files in the internet browser, and that he saw like what is the company that they're acquiring. And that news would be, because keep in mind, if we find out the company that they're acquiring, it gives us clues on the space infrastructure that they're going to go after. And it would have been very big news, but very wisely, he didn't share that one, right? He did. It was blurred out. So you were giving the life-changing news, but you just couldn't read it. So,
right. And that could very well be the case, right? It might have been that he tailored it specifically for information that's already publicly available, and you know, he didn't want to endanger whomever's presentation it is, right? Because I know what it's like to have information taken from you, and you know, I'm not hiding, but I mean, if people really want to know who I work for, they can look it up. But I try to keep that separation of church and state a little bit. I don't want to be like advertising who I work for on YouTube, right? Because you know, I have a separate job.
They don't
I want to
pay
keep
you
that.
for it.
Exactly, and I don't want to complicate things. So when I talk about Palantir, it's a skinny line because, you know, I use the product at my day job, and you know, so it'd be like me posting a picture from Palantir and somebody taking that and putting it on the internet, being like, Matt Farley from UDoc, and actually give the company name, does X, Y, and Z with the company, and this is his private, you know, proprietary information. I could get in trouble for that. You know, cybersecurity is a really big deal in a lot of companies these days. So, you know, I could be being hypercritical, and that that presentation might have been tailored.
Yeah. Well, all right. We go to the next one, which is that we are getting a new launch. I mean, we knew about this launch, but we're getting finally the launch date. So this quarter is not so hot when it comes to launches, but Peter Beck tweeted a picture of the factory, and he tweeted, full house. There's 2 Haste ones here. And yeah, I don't really see a way to cram in more rockets here. We know that they're only making rockets once they are ordered. So it looks like the launch manifest is looking good, but not in this quarter.
Yes, I was excited to see the Haste because I feel like there's only been, believe it or not, there's only been 1 Haste mission so far. Yeah. And it was in Virginia, and that was in June of last year. So I think that that's going to be an avenue for a lot of revenue growth. And I feel like the Haste payloads are way different than the payloads because they're all suborbital, right? So I think that the payloads are going to be way different, a lot more readily available. And so that's going to bring in more consistent revenue than what we might, well, I guess that's hard to say. More consistent revenue on a quarterly basis. The cash flow will probably be the same regardless, but it's going to bring realized revenue is going to be a lot more consistent with the Haste program, because I anticipate once that gets up and going, you're going to have a lot less, you know, moving back and forth between different quarters like you do right now with Electron, because I doubt that the criteria for setting a suborbital package up into the air is a lot less difficult than a satellite that needs to potentially go to Mars, Venus, or wherever, and stay up there for years, if not a decade. So that's my speculation, though. I don't know. Yeah,
I like your speculation. I don't know so much about the Haste missions. I guess it's also interesting because I don't think that these will be live streamed, because many of them is military and confidential. So we are also not going to learn so much more about them. But we just know that they might be. You asked Peter Beck on the interview about Haste, no?
Yeah, that was a big thing that I wanted to get clarity on.
And what did he say? Like, how big is it going to be?
I think he said it. You know, it's I asked him about the capacity, right? Not the lift capacity, but the capacity for launch, right? And how frequently, and technically he said with what they have and the facilities that they have, it could be technically unlimited. Now, is it actually unlimited? I don't necessarily know. There has to be some sort of limit somewhere, but I think comparatively to where we are today, you know, and having, you know, potentially 15, 16 launches in total this year, I would view it as almost unlimited. I would hope that it's, something where you could launch up to 20 times per quarter, right? And if you think about it, that's $200 million. If you think about it in that respect, per quarter, that could really be coming through the door. And I think that the ability to ramp up that program, the Haste program, is going to be much faster than the Electron program. So it also can lift more. That's another piece. But then again, you're going suborbital. He gave a lot of good information.
Yeah.
He made it seem like that there's going to be a lot less, kind of like what I alluded to. It feels like there's just going to be a lot less delays in the Haste program, because I feel like a lot of these things that they're testing, there's more companies potentially to test for. It's might not necessarily need as fine of detailing as you would putting a satellite into space. So
yeah. Lee Ellison, those don't look like very big rockets. I mean, yeah, that's how big the Electron rockets are, and they are. It's called the small launch for a reason. And then Lucas Zarezetsky is asking what Scotto was tweeting about when he said tomorrow is going to be a fun day for Rocket Lab investors, and I'm 99.999% sure that he was referring to the tweet sent by Space Talks, which was about a presentation given at Michigan University by a C-level executive at Rocket Lab, and it turned out to be a nothing burger. And apparently in this presentation, the guy was showing his computer and some of his internet browsers were open, and you could see which company Rocket Lab was trying to acquire. And this presentation is not available online. And then Space Talks, like the account Space Talk, chose very wisely, and I really thank him for it, not to share the company that Rocket Lab was trying to acquire. And that was the big news. Everything else was already known. And for some reason, the Space Talks guy has deleted the tweet, so you can't even access the tweet anymore. Yeah. Okay, we go to the next one. And that is, I want to see if I can play this. It's like a video about the Archimedes engine development. Matt, let me know if I have sound. Sound?
No.
Okay. It's so weird that, okay, I stop sharing. Then I have to like reshare, change nothing, and then suddenly there is. Let me see. Is there sound now?
Yeah. It's a dope song.
Yeah, it's a dope video. And yeah, I think as we're going to go to the next news also very soon, which also has to I don't know if we should take them together, but the point what I'm trying to make is I don't think Rocket Lab is being fully appreciated for that. They're not just getting a rocket to the pad that is an MVP, and then it's going to be like 2 years before we get the next launch. And you know, with a lot of delays, they're actually putting a whole production line, and they're already manufacturing. I think this was either the fourth Archimedes engine, because they were tweeting about 2 others that were done before. or it's one of those two that they were tweeting about. And this is also why I think that the hot fire test was fully completed with long actual hot fire test, because they wouldn't be cranking out engines if there is still question marks about if the engine is working or not. Yeah, I think we take it separately. The next news is going to be about relativity, and they're the opposite. Like, they got in a lot of money and they have production issues, but we take it in the next segment. So what are your comments about, like Neutron as a whole production line coming together at the same time? And do you think that people think with this when they analyze Rocket Lab?
I missed the second part of the question. What do you mean?
So, because I think that people don't take into account like how good Rocket Lab is on building the infrastructure behind the rocket. And the tweets, also this tweet that they're manufacturing the tanks, like the one that we had before, and the fairing, and all these things. So it's not like they're going to have a rocket on the pad and then it's going to be 2 years before the next launch, because they tested out everything and now they're like, okay, now we have to find a factory, now we have to, like, everything is already done like very well in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I don't necessarily think that a lot of people give them the credit they deserve. I think maybe because I think a lot of people these days, they're looking for hype. And I think that unfortunately just the way that media has changed over the past 10 years, that it's almost like providing hopium is more the medium that people enjoy these days rather than clean execution. And so that's why people, no offense, this is going to hit on Tesla investors, but it's the truth. People are all about like hearing that something's coming down the pipeline, like full self-driving, and rather than it be fully loaded out. Granted, there's betas out and they do a phenomenal job, right? I mean, they can do like 85 to 95%, but there's still that little 5% that really would impact it from being able to fully be launched as full self-driving. But to me, I think people almost love to have that hype, and they're more in love with listening to somebody than seeing what they're capable of. So, and I see that a lot with YouTube as well. Like, I feel as though you and I give out a lot of valuable information, but they'd rather follow somebody that's a little bit more polished. And they might have, and I'm not saying that somebody that only has invested 50 grand is a worse investor than myself, right? Because a lot of what I've been able to accomplish is done through saving and investing over the course of 10 years, right? But somebody might listen to somebody about, something just because they say it really eloquently, or they have a fancy camera, or, they have a nice flame going in the background, and they have like a cool setup in their background. They're like, ooh, this guy's got a cool setup and he speaks really eloquently. It's like they almost rather listen to how something is said rather than the quality of what's being said. And I feel like that's just a problem, and not just in the United States these days, but worldwide. We're being taught to be so superficial that we almost forget about the fact that execution is the hardest part on any of these things, not even just from a rocket standpoint, but from anything, company wise, stock investing wise, etc. So to me, I think when you have the visibility of a Mark Cuban or somebody else investing deep into the company, that shows up as, oh, this company's going to succeed. Oh, Chamath invested in that. This company's going to succeed, rather than a company that bootstrapped their way and utilized other people's money locally, than being public. It's the same sort of thing that happened with Snowflake versus Palantir. Everybody was all hyped up about Snowflake because Wall Street was behind it. Warren Buffett invested, all these but at the end of the day, Snowflake's cracks in the armor are starting to really show, and Palantir is the one that's kind of coming ahead. I think it's the same sort of thing. Everybody thought Astra was going to be the winner of the space race and for a small launch, and here we are. Astra's going to be lucky if they get the fourth rocket, Astra number 4, off the ground. So
yeah. And on this note, a company that is building on hype. I don't know if you saw this article. So Eric Berger, who's a very good space journalist, wrote this article. Relativity Space has gone from printing money and rockets to doing what exactly? And the whole controversy started from them posting this image and saying like big news about a rocket. Oh, did you guys lose me a little bit? No, okay. My screen went blank. So he posted this picture, and then people within an hour noticed that this is the same fairing as the Ariane 6 rocket's fairing, and then it turned out that what they posted as progress picture is actually just they happened to buy a fairing that was left over from the Ariane 6, and the whole company basically, like, their niche was that they were going to 3D print the whole rocket, and then they went from they're going to 3D print most of the rocket, and now they basically made their rocket the same size as the Ariane 6, so they can cross-use components. They are, buying the fairing from someone else, and I have no freaking clue how they're going to be competitive with this setup, because it's just everything. Did you read this article? I'm just curious if you. No, okay, yeah. No problem. So basically, in the article, it said that also their factories are very far from each other, and then because of their design choices, like the rocket cannot be transported between, the factory. Like, it has to go on a ship, go through the Suez Canal to be tested in Stennis, and then shipped to Florida, and then just the shipping costs were estimated to be like over $3 million on one rocket.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So this is what we were speaking about before, that this company they were designing a rocket, they were designing hype, and they were not thinking with infrastructure production. Like, okay, if we design a rocket this big, where is it easy to manufacture it? How can we ship it? And then they also chose the Kennedy Space Center, where it's basically fully booked out by SpaceX and I think New Glenn, and like then you start to see the genius of Peter Beck for being he was a small fish in a very big pond in the Kennedy Space Center, and instead he went to Wallops, where him still being a small fish is a really big fish, and he can get a lot of launches there. And this company has not had anything in space yet, and they are valued more than Rocket Lab. And by the way, they got in this article, you can read that it looks like they got a huge launch contract from Amazon for the Kuiper constellation, which they took from Rocket Lab. And I'm very sure that the only way that they could get this launch contract is that they massively discounted the rockets. So yeah, I think they're a mess. Do you think that Amazon is going to come crawling back to Rocket Lab when Neutron is flying, because they need to get the satellites up? So do you think how serious do you think this competition is? And what do you think about the fact that Rocket Lab seems to have lost out on a huge Kuiper contract?
I think it's just temporary. I think eventually people will be coming back. We're already starting to see the slippage from Blue Origin. I wasn't surprised by that. Granted, that's more of a heavy launch vehicle, right? But even still, Relativity claims that they're going to be being able to get up into space in 25, but reality, it's likely going to be 26 or 27. And I just feel like people are eventually going to continue to delay. And people are going to be like, well, we need it now. And the competition is going to come back to Rocket Lab and SpaceX and say, you guys win, right? You're available. You're ready. And then obviously some people are going to have a problem with SpaceX because of who runs it. And then some people are going to have a problem with Rocket Lab because maybe they view it as a company out of New Zealand, even though it's an American-based company. But, you know, people are always going to have problems with specific companies, right? I mean, but it goes back to, you know, having the opportunity there, right? The total addressable market's growing. The competition, I think, is still super fierce, still super untested. I mean, the Terran 1 did a good job getting to orbit, but if I recall, it didn't fully complete its space mission, if I recall, right? So, you know, to immediately shut down that program and go to the Terran R, I mean, all the power to them, but I feel like, you know, they still have to prove themselves as a space launch company in general. And do they have the space systems piece that's going to keep them afloat? You know, it's going to be quite some time between when they get their first launch off and will they have the sustainability of cash flow coming through the door. Luckily for Rocket Lab, you know, they have 500 million on the balance sheet. They have a space systems business that's slowly getting them closer and closer to break even, regardless of a massive capital expenditure for them, at least in terms of scale, to put Neutron into space of up to $300 million net for the company. And in the meantime, you know, they're getting closer and closer to break even. So it's going to be harder and harder, right? Not only will you now have two great companies, SpaceX and Rocket Lab, but they're two profitable companies, or very near profitable. I assume SpaceX is. I know they also have a big budget associated with launching the Starships, right? But it's going to be hard, right? It's competing against those two. I wouldn't say that there's not going to be a third or a fourth or a fifth, but you know, they better get there quick, right? Because once that kind of third and fifth one show up, the market's going to start really consolidating, and it already has, right? But I think it's really going to become evident over the next 2 to 3 years who's actually going to last. And there could be some disruptor that comes out of nowhere. Like I think Stoke is doing a decent job, you know, not trying to spread any hate, but they have to demonstrate a little bit more than what they already have to really think that they can dethrone Rocket Lab as a solid number 2.
They have a very rough road ahead. I also
it's like it's almost like me saying that Rocket Lab's going to dethrone SpaceX. Like it's like you've demonstrated a lot, but have you demonstrated enough to say that you can dethrone SpaceX? The answer is no, right? So it's almost the same as them saying as the number 3, 4, or 5 to say they've demonstrated enough to dethrone Rocket Lab. It's just not the case. They haven't demonstrated enough, right? These guys are 50 launches ahead of pretty much everybody in terms of small launch, and I'm sure by the time they get their medium launch vehicles up, they'll probably be 4 or 5 launches ahead, and I anticipate maybe even more depending on how delayed some of these guys are.
Yeah. I wanted to say something very important, but I totally blanked out.
That's my fault. I went on a little monologue there.
No, that's cool. I think it will come back to me. Oh yeah, what I wanted to say is important note. There was in this Rocket Lab chat that we have on Twitter, somebody posted a really good segment from Andy Lepsa, the Stoke CEO, when he was speaking about that. Basically, space launch, when you try to get satellites into orbit, is not so different than it was many years ago, because he gave this example that OneWeb was the first, like they were trying to be like Starlink, and it was so hard for them to put their satellites in orbit that by the time the last satellites went up in orbit, the first satellites had to be decommissioned, and they ended up going basically belly up. And Starlink is, you know, obviously going up with SpaceX, but then, for example, you have Amazon Kuiper, and they're trying to get Kuiper up, and they cannot, because they are refusing to fly on SpaceX, and none of the other launch vehicles are ready to fly them. And he made this point that it's not just, you know, like it's cheap and reliable availability to space. And even if you have a competitor that is cheap but they're not launching, it's like, what are you going to do with your satellites on you know, stuck on Earth? So I think that we as Rocket Lab shareholders have to be very careful when, you know, Relativity Blue Origin and these other companies are announcing like contracts that were awarded to them, because if they're not ready with the launch vehicle and Rocket Lab shows up with the Neutron and they have the possibility to fly, those customers will cancel and flock over, like come back to Neutron, you know? So I think that
NASA Tropics was originally supposed to go in with Astra, right?
Yeah. And I'm 100% that when Amazon, like for the Kuiper constellation, they have to get something like 6,000 satellites in orbit before 2026 or something like this. Otherwise, they lose the permit to, I mean, I'm sure that there's a way to prolong it or whatever. But like, even if Blue Origin is launching once per year, it's nowhere good enough for Amazon. And they're not going to, or yeah, maybe they got sued now, so maybe they will do some token SpaceX launches, but you guys get the point. So I think we don't need to be so worried about Rocket Lab getting these contracts. I think what we need to be worried about is actually seeing Neutron be operational, because that's when the magic will happen.
Well said.
All right, we go over to the next one. I think this was very smart and kind of to be expected, but AST SpaceMobile did an ATM offering, which is an automated teller machine. You know, you go there and then the cash comes out. No, it's an at the market offering of their stock. They're raising $400 million. The stock plummeted on this news, and I think it was announced. I mean, the stock was 8% down on Friday, but everything was down on Friday, and we are down about 30% from the peak. And unfortunately, Rocket Lab currently, if you look at it, has a very similar chart to ASTS. So I think that it dragged us down also. But going back to the offering, I think it's a very smart thing to do when your stock price is so high, to get in much needed funding. Do you track ASTS, Matt? And what are your thoughts on this company?
I don't really track it, no. I kind of have my stock and I stick with it. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I think, I've been following them lightly over the past year or so. I had a friend that invested and he had some forethought into it, and I researched a little bit, and I think they've done a good job. I think it's one of those things where I feel like they've got good marketing, and with that, they have some really upfront clients and some upfront contracts that really, I think, are people starting to relate to Starlink, and in terms of the potential magnitude of it. But we'll see, right? I think there's a difference between getting contracts and actually executing them. And that's not to say that they won't, but I feel like it's going to take a lot longer than people truly think. But I think it's prudent that they get the $400 million. Good for them, I would say. Take the opportunity of a $8 billion market cap valuation to dilute shareholders and get that extra money. I don't think it's a bad idea, especially at the peak, if they can get decent valuations. Because I think in the short term, this thing will be back under $20, and they'll have wish that they had done it. So I think it's good management. They did it while the stock was up rather than while the stock was down. So took advantage of it.
Cool. And the last one that I wanted to cover here from Space News is that the Starliner actually just landed safely back on Earth. Yeah.
Good. I didn't see
Didn't burn up. That there was a press briefing after they had seats there for Boeing executives, but none showed up. I mean, what do you think is going to happen with Boeing after this? Do you think they're going to continue with Starliner despite their losses, or NASA is going to have to look for other crew capsules that people need to develop?
Well, I just want to say, I mean, just from a logistics and visibility standpoint, the fact that Boeing executives didn't show up, I mean, granted, I don't know necessarily who was supposed to show up, but that just shows poor faith, in my opinion. I mean, even in the face of crisis, you should definitely always be representing the organization and show that you're there and trying to support the company going forward. But to cower away, I think is pretty sad. Granted, I don't necessarily know who was supposed to show up, but
I mean, anyone. It's
yeah, but yeah, the fact that it was kind of just nobody, interesting. But granted, that's news to me, so I don't necessarily know too much about it at all. But I'm happy to hear that it was safe and landed. I think that to push things forward, we need to have multiple avenues of being able to progress forward. And it's the same with, I mean, luckily the Dragon's been doing great and we haven't had many problems with it as of yet, but who's to say, it's literally rocket science and thin margins of error, right? And having just one in a market like this is not good. So I hope that the Starliner program continues. It looks, based off of what I've seen and heard over the past several months, looks to be challenged for sure, to put it lightly. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't wish poorly upon anybody. I wish for the future of space travel, I think it's necessary to have two. So I hope they continue with it.
Yes, it's necessary with two, a SpaceX and a Rocket Lab capsule.
Yeah.
That's just my suggestion. I mean, yeah, I think that they were maybe not there as a protest because I guess they didn't agree with NASA's decision. Because I heard something like that that Boeing would have wanted to fly the Starliner back crewed. NASA thought it was too risky, and I guess they disagreed. Like the two companies disagreed on this. And the sad thing is that, like, let's say that there was a 30% chance that things could go wrong, right? Which means the 70% chance that it would land safely. And all we see now is, it landed safely. So maybe the Boeing guys were correct that NASA was like overcautious, But the chances were always like small, right? Like the argument was always like, what is the risk tolerance? And I heard something like NASA's risk tolerance is like 0.5%. So like if you fly 20 times and there is one failure, like that's the acceptable for NASA. And then they deemed this issue that Starliner was having to like 1.5 risk, meaning like 3 failures out of 20. And this is why they were like, okay, F it, we take the Dragon. But it doesn't mean that this capsule was all bad, right? But surely it does not look good on optics for Boeing. All right, I was thinking to close out this segment, so we should look at the stock price, and we did come back. We were up in 7.5 almost, and now we're back below 5.8. Some people were asking, are you still confident about your prediction of 15 by the end of next year? And what should we think about the stock price? So what are your predictions? Where do we go from here? Should we be freaking out and calling our daddies for hugs, or should we be buying more?
Well, you should always be reaching for hugs. Hugs are good for the soul, but not in the case of Rocket Lab. I think that it's perfectly fine with where it's at, and to me, I think it's par for the course being under $6. I think it has not gotten to a place where it needs a reval of the stock price, right? I think one of two things needs to happen: either basically a wet dress rehearsal of Neutron to really move the stock price, a large contract that gets the backlog to be more than, I guess, 2.5 years run rate, like it is currently, or second or thirdly, I guess, if depending on how I worded this, needs to become profitable. So I think both are still 12 to 18 months away. And I think I'm still confident on $15 by the end of next year. I don't think you need profitability to get to 15. I think you just need a successful Neutron to be on the pad, launch successfully, and get to orbit. I think if it doesn't get to orbit, obviously, that would not lead to a $15 price unless there's a second Neutron that happens prior to the end of the year that is successful. And I don't think that they need to put anything actually into orbit. I think they just need to successfully get to orbit. Whether or not they land the first time, man, if they land the first time, I would expect the price to go north of 20, but or even do what SpaceX did, which is basically land above the water and then slowly fall over, right? Because obviously I don't think they'll get the permit to land on a barge immediately. They'll probably have to do and represent and say, okay, well, they can hover and basically soft land on something and then tip over slowly, like they did for SpaceX. So, I'm still fairly confident. I don't think anything will push it yet. If obviously things get pushed to December 2025 for the Neutron launch, then I'll have to revisit that by $15 price target for next year. But I'm still confident.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that I think currently the stock price is sort of in no man's land. Like we need, I literally don't know where we're going to go in the short term. I would be very surprised to see prices below 4, but anything is possible. Even below 5, I would be quite surprised. But I think the same, that for the stock to continue going higher, we need a big contract. Or we need Neutron flying, and absent that, we're just at the mercy of the market. I think the rate cuts are kind of priced in, like also to the stock market, maybe into this stock. I don't think that it's going to, like, I saw that some people are saying that, yeah, like this is the date when the Fed is going to announce the rate cuts, and then Rocket Lab is going to moon. These things I think are priced in, well. Like I think going from 3.5 to where we are today was pricing in the easier monetary environment. And my best advice is you do your thesis, you do your stock evaluation, and if you don't have a full position, then you set a price that, okay, like if we go below this price, then I'm willing to add more. And if you have a full position but have money over, then I would set like a crazy price, like, if we go back to below 420, I would be buying, like I would buy again, and then just wait patiently, and maybe you will be able to add to your position.
Yeah, I think I need to go back, and I mean, I would love to still get to 25,000 shares, but anyway, sorry, I got distracted. I would love to get to 25. I think I'm trying to decide if that's enough or if there's another goal. So I need to go back and just do some math and see, if we were to get to X, Y, and Z market cap, would I be happy with that? Because right now I have about 19,000 something. I forget how many shares. And I mean, obviously it gets to $100 a share. That's a pretty nice chunk of change, but would I want to potentially get more than that if I were to go to $100 a share? And not saying it's even 100, right? It could just be 50, and would I be satisfied with if it gets to 50, which I think is plausible, very plausible. Would I be satisfied with the resulting number with only having 19,000 shares, or would it need to be 30,000 or 40,000 shares and adjust the portfolio to accommodate?
Yeah. everybody needs to do their own math on this. And another point that I want to mention, because there's a lot of talk about recession, and I think that the recession, yes, would affect the stock price, but not the company. Like Peter Beck also spoke about this in recent interviews that he gave, that the space investments, they run on such a long time horizon, like many years into the future, that you can have many economic cycles. I mean, just think with Neutron, like since Neutron was announced, we had a whole pandemic, we had the whole inflation saga, and now we might have a recession, and then Neutron comes out, you know. So keep that in mind, that it might hit the stock price, but the company is the same good company with the same thesis. So it just means it's a better buying opportunity if the stock price falls from here. Cool. Well, I think that was it for this week. It was an exciting episode. Thanks for everyone watching. Thank you, Curtis, for the super chat as always. Yeah, let's hope we get a good week, and see you everyone next week.
Yes, thank you for having me. Sorry, an interesting question.
Do you want to answer it, or?
I'm just curious, do they think it could launch before Q3? Hopefully they mean 2025, not 2024.
I guess that's what I mean,
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.